With the numbers of students entering university each year soaring, so is the demand for student accommodation. And while securing a spot on campus is tough enough, it's also becoming increasingly difficult to find suitable private housing. Joining us at the desk now is Tia Bezaden-Holt, Managing Director of JHI Residential. Tia, thank you so much for making the time to join us, and congratulations on getting the memo to wear pink, as against one member of our desk who hasn't gotten it right today. But I mean, let's talk about the management of student accommodation. How important is it first to be in partnership with those universities, or is it fairly simple just to be in the university precinct and then take the opportunity from there?
Just to correct you, we manage accommodation on behalf of private owners,
right.
But it's based at campus or in areas away from campus. We have buildings in Braamfontein, about 10 of them, of which 7 is student accommodation only, on behalf of a fund, Student Dix. And there you have to transport students to UJ or WITS or other educational institutes. What I find is it's very important for owner to know that the buildings are taken care of, but it's as important for the parents to know that where they place their kids, that somebody cares for them.
Tia, when you talk about owners, I mean, is it generally parents who have children in university who would then, buy an apartment and then lease it out, or people coming in and just making the investment there?
No, this is people making an investment. For example, Student Dix, the partner I have there is IHS, International Housing Solutions, and they have 10 buildings in a fund. And they've got equity partners who bought this provided funds so they can buy these buildings. So obviously in the end, all the stakeholders want to make their piece of money.
Yeah.
But where we come in, we provide a service to the owners, the landlords we call them. And for them it's important, I call it, we need to get bums in the beds. And when there's a bum in the bed, it means I can make money for the stakeholders. But on the other end, if you pay for accommodation, you need to make sure that it's safe, it's secure, and good taken care of.
I think the question I'd want to ask specifically on butts on beds analogy is, what's the supply and demand situation at the moment? I just look at the pictures of people queuing outside the universities at the moment. There's clearly oversupply of students looking to get into the varsities. Is the same thing happening from an accommodation perspective?
There's definitely a huge demand. There is a need for accommodation, and I think some people are ripping off the situation by providing not adequate accommodation to students. And some of the students are coming from far away areas, first time in the city, so there's definitely a huge demand. And I think it's time for private sector to take hands with government and universities and do some triple Ps, develop accommodation.
Yes. If I could just latch on to what you were saying, Mark. I think it's the market is really the student market that's looking for housing is growing phenomenally. In 2012, there was a ministerial committee report from the Department of Higher Education that said that in 2012, of the 530 learners or students that were admitted at university, they could only provide accommodation for 100,000, which means that's about only 18% of the students that registered. The rest were left, were left hanging dry. So I think there is an enormous opportunity for private investors, for private property developers to develop these accommodation centers for students. There is one called Ekaya Junction, I think it's in Pretoria.
Yes.
Now, Ekaya Junction is a partnership between various universities in Gauteng and property development, property developers, and I think future growth is also involved. Now that's about 300. That's a 300 million development. It's going to house about 5,300 students. So the opportunities are there because the market is really open. There is just a massive shortage of accommodation for learners, for students at university.
I fully agree with you. I'm involved in a project in Namibia, Windhoek, with Imona. That will be a hostels next to the UNAM campus. And my partner there, the landlord, is Imona Hanganeni. And I mean, UNAM itself, on that campus, I think they accommodate 13,000 students. They want to grow so that they can accommodate more students. However, where do the students stay? And their campus hostels, which is UNAM's campus, they can accommodate, I think, for 2,000 or 3,000 students already. Without them expanding the educational side of things, there's a backlog in where do the people stay. So we're taking on students now from the 1st of Feb. And in the end, we'll have 1,150 beds, but there's another 2 phases so that we can triple the amount of beds. But already there's people trying to book for the years after next, you know.
So I hear something like that, and I'm a born and bred capitalist, so I love the idea of it. But how do I make money out of it? Do I go and say, do I go and buy a house around a university? Do I go and look at a flat? What are the business models that are working, if you guys, from your perspective, in terms of consistent revenue and genuine payoff from an investment perspective?
I think, yes, a house can work, but who's managing the house?
Sure.
And we all have been students. Students are taking chances. You will play tricks on each other and take a fire extinguisher and put it down a lift gate and all those nice things. What I believe is, I think there is a demand and I think there is money to be made. I think investors are scared because students are students. I always say students are normal tenants. But I also believe that you need a proper model to manage the buildings, but also manage the students, and with that is manage your collections. And what we do is we've got various types of payers. It can be government grants, the NSFAS in South Africa and NSFAS in Namibia. There's bursaries, and there's various models. But I mean, if we collect your money, there's definitely money to be made. But I think it's important to provide proper accommodation. I mean, students, and the nice thing that I like about the universities is they want us to be accredited, because then they will recommend students to come and stay in your accommodation or flats or hostels. And then there's certain things that we need to comply with. I mean, most of the units that I manage it's like self-catering. You have a flat type of model where the students, they have their rooms. It's normally sharing rooms. Depends on what they can afford. So single rooms are obviously much more expensive than sharing rooms. Then you have communal kitchens, bathrooms. And when it's like a flat, you have 4 or 6 or 10 people sharing adequate number of toilets and baths, etc. And when it is like a hostel, then it's like when you and I studied, it's a normal, you have all these rooms and you've got the communal and areas. But you also need to provide them things like a study area, a gym, a canteen. You know, and then if there is a social problem, they need to know they can go somewhere so that somebody can assist them with their social problems. And like I said earlier, many of the students in both Namibia as well as South Africa that I'm involved in, they're coming from really rural areas, which is far away. And you dump them in a city environment, it's not secure, so you need to provide them security. That's why house rules critical to manage.
If we look at broader projects like the urban renewal or rejuvenation projects in Braamfontein, how important is that for the business, where you can ensure the security in addition to all the facilities that you've mentioned? I'm sure that would be a big hygiene factors that parents would look for.
It is. What we do is, I mean, the proof is in the pudding in the end. And, you know, all the community, whether it's Braamfontein or Sandton or Pretoria, you do have security issues, but we try and work together with the community, our security company, with the police, but we also, there's rules. 9 o'clock, students must be in. If not, then you alarm and you alert and see where are they. You phone them and make sure they are in. So we really try and work. I mean, together we can do a lot. Alone, it's very difficult.
Just a quick one. Here's also where I think we can make money, Mark. I think we must start a property development company together. So statistics from the Department of Higher Education say that to be able to address this backlog, over the next 10 years, they will need to spend 82.4 billion rand.
That's a lot of tenders.
It's a lot of money.
We'll be involved.
Over the next 15 years, it's 109.6 billion rand.
So the reason, exactly to that point, the reason I was asking the question earlier, do you buy that sort of house type approach? You know, one of the things is you've got this, the problem with the hostel type environment is that it's essentially like a sardines, as people are packed in trying to get the maximum yield out of it. One of the trends that does seem to be coming through locally is this idea of student village type approaches, which talks to the security. Are we seeing that, and is that kind of the less sardines and more the broader investment around universities is likely to be the payoff?
I think there's a combination of the sardines plus the community. My new development in Namibia, Imona, is like a nice clustered environment. It's closed environment next to the campus, but it's like you've got these blocks, 16 blocks, 3 floors each, and it's nice. It's not sardines. But the one thing I can tell you, if you comply with university regulations, they pre-describe how big the area should be for a single room, a double room. So you can't just put people in and think you're going to have 10 people in a single room. And if I am the manager, I don't think I will be comfortable with that. It will be burning my heart, and I'm very fortunate the landlords that I work with in IHS and Dimona, they care. You know.
What about the credit risk that a student presents? And I don't know whether it's changed much. I mean, it seems like particularly 2008 through to 2010, consumers across the board were really under the whip. There was just, they were tenants were representing it in certain brackets, very poor risk. What about students? Are they a good investment? Obviously, the theory is that parents will pay on their behalf, so that should give you some kind of trust in them as a tenant. What are the trends happening there?
I'm also the lucky one that in the position that I am and managing the buildings, we also manage the arrears book and collect the rent. What we normally do is you pay in advance. There is a deposit payable which we keep in a trust account, interest-bearing trust account. And what we do is 90% of the students we have here in Joburg area are government students. And government students are studying with a NSFAS loan. So my duty is to ensure that I have the correct students on my list to, for example, WITS, and WITS will receive the money they pay me. On UJ's side, we need to make sure that every student pay because the government pays into the student card and we need to swipe. With regards to bursaries, you need to manage it as with any other tenant. And I have to tell you, I do normal residential and I do student accommodation, and the arrears are similar. I think with students, and I'm very passionate about students, I think it's better because with student grants, my job is to make sure NSFAS pay. And I mean, it's easy because the money is there.
Thank you so much, Tia. Unfortunately, we have to wrap it on that note. That was Tia Bazarian-Holt, Managing Director of JHI Residential. Time now for Befriend the Trend. Retailers will have to find innovative ways to retain and attract more customers as online shopping becomes more popular as a form of experiential retail. TrendHunter.com recently identified 20 experiential retail trends set to disrupt the traditional bricks and mortar way of shopping. Now, Mark, if I was to give you a laptop, would that make you more keen to go shopping with me
I've
than...
really got a business idea. Hold on. I can do this. Online retail. So here we go. I go to, I want to buy a school uniform at the end for my child at the start of the year. And I go into McCulloch and Bothwell here in Hyde Park, and the queue is just out the door. And it is completely driven around the school term. And then there's no stock, you never have the wrong sizes, and you've got one supplier. I mean, I'm sure there's a competition commission thing here that I'm desperately trying to get in front of them. But yeah, jokes aside, the opportunity could be there to do online retail for school shopping. And I can tell you I'd sign up for the service, drop of a hat. Pick and Pay's online retail for groceries, etc. That kind of thing works really, really well. I think a problem in South Africa is that we don't have, there are very few models that really work. I mean, even the big sites are not making money at the moment, and the idea is that it's long tail and it pays off down the line. But, you know, we're very much a South African culture of going to a shopping mall and it's a destination. Yes, it's changing, but I think if you start looking, it's very interesting what's been happening with a lot of these retailers in the US with the card cloning, etc. I mean, you know, there was a situation, these were debit cards, not even credit cards, but like Target, I think, had 1.3 million customers have their debit cards cloned. You know, that totally destroys the trust in the system. So yes, there's an opportunity in online retail. The opportunity, the issue is probably going to come down to how you manage the risk of managing those cards. And I think a lot of the offerings in South Africa still don't necessarily comply with international regulations in terms of security. And then even, you know, the argument is even if they did comply, you have a situation like Target and it destroys the credibility of it.
Would you then say it's perhaps a bit too simplistic to think of the traditional bricks and mortar retailers as possibly losing out because they could latch on to this very trend and actually extend their offering via an online platform? So,
you know, I was reading this morning fashion businesses, whole of South African fashion businesses are actually going out of business at the moment because of the arrival of Zara and all these other international brands. And, you know, like I say, South Africans still in a fashion scene go to a shopping mall. They don't go and buy from, you know, these little online retailers because they don't have sufficient trust in what they're getting for their offering. So yes, it's interesting. Yes, it could be a support for it. And I think that if you're running a business, you should be looking to combine your online retail with your foot traffic. But it's definitely, the trend is there, but it's definitely not one that you can simply say, stick up a store and you're going to cash in on.